Hey guys, in today's video, Gio and I are going to be drinking Long Island iced tea, so we thought we'd start off the video by showing you how to make it, in case you want to have one with us. So for the Long Island iced tea, you're going to want to fill a glass up with ice. You'll add a ½ ounce of vodka, a ½ ounce of rum, a ½ ounce of gin, a ½ ounce of tequila, a ½ ounce of triple sec, one ounce of sweet and sour mix, and then finally top it off with some Coca-Cola. Obviously, there are several different ways you can make a Long Island iced tea. This is just one of them. Tweak it to fit your personal tastes.
Welcome back. Today's video, we are going to be reviewing Joker.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
We're your hosts, Matt and Gio, and today, as you saw previously, we are drinking Long Island iced tea.
Cheers. Nice to finally be doing this in person,
absolutely, right?
Yeah, so like you said, we're drinking the Long Island iced teas today. We're reviewing the Joker. So this movie was directed by Todd Phillips, who also directed Starsky and Hutch and the Hangover trilogy, several other comedies that you're probably familiar with. Producer was also Todd Phillips and Bradley Cooper. Yes, that Bradley Cooper. The same Bradley Cooper who acted in the Hangover trilogies, plays Rocket in the MCU movies, and he was also in A Star is Born and Limitless.
Oh, wow. And so we got a few actors here, known actors. We have Joaquin Phoenix, who's going to play Joker. We have also Robert De Niro, who plays Murray Franklin, Frances Conroy, she plays Penny Fleck, Zazie Beetz, who is playing Sophie Drummond, Brett Cullen, who's going to be playing Thomas Wayne.
All right, thank you, Gio, for that. So this movie, Joker, starts out with Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, working as a clown. While on the job, he gets beat up by some kids while he's holding a sign for a store. Next thing, it shows him in a in a meeting with a social worker, where it's revealed that he had previously been in a mental hospital and that he is also an aspiring stand-up comedian. He has a condition that makes him laugh uncontrollably and at inappropriate times. He lives with his mother, Penny Fleck, to whom he acts as a caregiver, and it is also revealed that she has been writing letters to Thomas Wayne as she used to work for him. Coming home from work one day, he gets into the elevator with one of the other tenants of the building called Sophie, and they have a little bit of small talk there. He follows her downtown the next day to a bank, and she comes to him later that evening and asks if he had been following her. He tells her yes, but she doesn't really seem to be too bothered by it.
Were you following me today?
Yeah.
I thought that was you. I was hoping you'd come in and rob the place.
The next day, he is performing at a children's hospital as a clown when his gun, which was given to him by a fellow coworker, falls out of his pocket, and as a result, he gets fired from his job. He takes the train home, still in full clown makeup, and on the train, he gets beat up by 3 businessmen, but then he shoots and kills all 3 of them. No one else was on the train, so no one else saw it happen. He goes back to his building, but instead of going to his apartment, he goes to Sophie's apartment, where they make out. The next day, Thomas Wayne is on TV addressing the public about the murders, and he calls people who haven't made anything of themselves clowns. When Arthur goes to see his social worker, he learns that the funding for the visits has been cut, so he will no longer be able to see her or get his medications. He goes to an open mic night at a comedy club and starts laughing uncontrollably and ultimately bombs. Sophie is there watching from the audience. Back home that night, he reads one of the letters that his mom had been writing to Thomas Wayne, and she refers to Arthur in the letter as your son. When he asks his mother about it, she says that Thomas Wayne had her sign something basically saying that she wouldn't tell anyone that Thomas Wayne is actually Arthur's father. The next day, Arthur goes to Wayne Manor to try and talk to Thomas Wayne, but he ends up talking to Bruce instead until Alfred tells him to leave. He then goes back home to see the paramedics taking his mother to the hospital. At the hospital, he's approached by 2 detectives who are looking into the subway murders, but he basically brushes them off, saying he has to go see his mom. On TV is the Murray Franklin Show, where Murray is showing a clip of Arthur's stand-up performance from the other night, and Arthur realizes that he is being made fun of. The next day, Arthur goes to a theater where Thomas Wayne is and introduces himself. Wayne, recognizing who Arthur is, tells him that he was never involved with Penny that way, and that she adopted him while she was working at Wayne Manor, and shortly after was committed to Arkham State Hospital. Thomas punches Arthur and tells him to leave Bruce alone. The next morning, Arthur gets a call from the Murray Franklin Show asking him to be a guest on the show due to a stand-up clip. He goes to Arkham State Hospital to see his mother's records, and he sees that she was committed after being abused by a boyfriend and also allowing that boyfriend to abuse Arthur. She was diagnosed with delusional psychosis and narcissistic personality disorder. He goes back to his building, but goes into Sophie's apartment instead of his.
Your name's Arthur, right? You live down the hall? I really need you to leave. My little girl's sleeping in the other room.
And at this moment, it is revealed that everything they had done together in the past was Arthur's imagination. At the hospital with Penny the next day, Arthur tells Penny that he has never been happy in his life, and at that point smothers her with her pillow. He goes back home to practice for his upcoming appearance on the Murray Franklin Show, where his former co-workers Randall and Gary show up. Arthur kills Randall, but lets Gary go because Gary is the only one who is ever nice to Arthur. Arthur makes his way to the studio in full clown gear, and he meets Murray before the show and asks Murray at this point to introduce him as Joker when the show actually goes on. Murray introduces Arthur after playing a clip of his stand-up performance again. Joker and Murray have an awkward conversation, and then Joker confesses to killing the 3 men on the subway. Murray admonishes him for his actions and says not everyone is awful, and at that point the Joker says Murray is awful for playing his clip and shoots him right there on set. He is taken away in a police car, but the other clowns are able to break him out, and at that point all the clowns rally around Arthur. In the next scene, Arthur is shown in a mental hospital talking to a counselor or a social worker. As he leaves the room, the song That's Life begins to play, and it shows him leaving the room with bloody footprints. As he gets further and further from the camera, he starts to get chased by someone there in the hospital, and that is how the movie ends.
Well, thanks for that, Matt.
Of course.
So we're actually going to go ahead and discuss a couple of things regarding the movie. So one of the things that we want to discuss about is Thomas Wayne. During the movie, it shows that Joker finds out from his mom that he's his dad, that he had left. And so when Arthur went to go meet him, he then was talking about that, oh, I'm your son. And then all of a sudden, Thomas Wayne was like, no, you are not. That your mom is basically delusional, and then you were adopted. So the reason why we want to discuss is if he could actually be the father. I know in the movie, Thomas Wayne basically says, oh, well, I'm not your dad, your mom's delusional. But there's so many different ways where, because since Thomas Wayne in the movie is a very rich person, he can instantly have him go through and having like write a, what's that word I'm thinking about?
Like a fake, come up with a fake story or something.
Yeah, and so just making his mom like sign up an agreement to not disclose anything in that regarding. So, but because his mom was also in a insane asylum as well, that they'll never believe her because of her history and her past. So all this can actually be true or not. What would you think?
Yeah, like we've kind of learned that this movie is sort of told through Arthur's eyes. Thomas Wayne in this movie is sort of made out to be like, kind of a jerk. And like it's I don't think it's too far-fetched to assume that, what, he might actually be Arthur's dad. I wouldn't put it past him to have had Penny admitted into the state hospital, or to, have fake adoption papers drawn up, to protect his image, because he's a guy, he's in the public eye. He's Thomas Wayne. He's a pretty big deal, Wayne Enterprises. And you and I were talking before we recorded that we sort of had different interpretations of whether or not Thomas Wayne was the father. Like, to me, it's still up in the air. He could very well be the father. There was a scene in the movie where there was a picture of Penny when she was younger, and on the back it said something like "Love Your Smile" or something to that effect, and then it had the initials TW. So, like, it could very well be that she was making all this up. She was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder when she was admitted into Arkham State Hospital. But, who are we to know that this doctor or whoever it was that diagnosed her wasn't on Thomas Wayne's payroll?
Oh yeah, I see.
So, I mean, that's my thing. Like, you can't really take anything in this movie at face value, because, some of the things that she said, Penny said, checked out, and some of the things that Thomas Wayne said checked out. So it's just sort of how you choose to interpret it. And plus, the idea that Joker and Batman are brothers is just like, that just adds so much more to that whole dynamic between those two, because those two characters have a huge history. And then if
this movie interprets them to be brothers in this in this universe,
that would be huge for just the whole Batman Joker dynamic.
And it would be different than what other movies had portrayed in the past. That would be pretty interesting if that was the case. The reason why I don't believe that is because in the movie they basically just say Thomas Wayne comes by and basically tells them your mom was delusional, she was at an insane asylum, you're an adopted. So when he goes to the asylum, there was those papers that were there and saying every disorder that she had, and that he was abused when he was a child as well, which caused his neurological issues. And what he was saying was there was more facts to what he was saying at that time than what I gathered from because the mom can easily write what she wants to on the paper. Because towards the beginning of the movie, she basically was shown to be, or towards the end actually, to be at the insane asylum when Arthur finds out, and they were basically having a flashback of them talking to her like, no, this never happened. And so you can see in her eyes that she wasn't sure if it was. She thought she did. You were mentioning earlier as well that in the beginning he was also was at the hospital, or locked up in the hospital as well in the very beginning of the movie. So there's more to that too. So
yeah. I mean, it seems like, it's something that, might run in the family or something like that. But yeah, he was it's a little throwaway line during his meeting, that first scene with the social worker, when he says something along the lines of, I feel like I was doing better when I was locked up. So he was locked up in what I assume was a hospital. Yeah, he said it was a hospital. So I mean, he was locked up in a hospital. And that kind of brings me into another topic, because he at the beginning of the movie, he's not in the hospital at the beginning of the movie, but it makes it sound like he has recently been released or got out of that hospital. And then we go all the way to the last scene in the movie where he's in the hospital again, talking to, whoever that may be, the counselor, the social worker. And, we talk about how everything in this movie has been seen through Arthur's eyes. And we know that he can create scenarios and events and things like that in his head. The whole thing with Sophie. There were scenes that showing the two of them going out together when he went to her apartment and they were making out. And even when he was there at the hospital with his mom, after she got taken to the hospital, she was there with him. And then we later learned that all of these events that, where Sophie was apparently with him, she wasn't there. He was just imagining she was there. So I feel like what we see in this movie isn't something we can really trust, because everything is from his perspective, which isn't entirely reliable.
Yeah.
So that brings me to the question of the fact that he ends the movie in a mental hospital and starts the movie having just got out of one. My question is, did he ever leave that mental hospital throughout the whole course of the movie? Or was all that happened in his head?
That's actually an interesting thing to bring up too, because yeah, like the whole entire thing can actually be just in his imagination. Basically, a story that he made up their entire time. A story that he made up about his mom. In the movie, he killed his mom. He smothered her when he found out that what she told him was a lie, and from what Thomas Wayne was telling her. So he can use all this as an excuse just with his own delusion. So notice like him killing and everything like that may not all be like actually happen. There might be some other type of like schizophrenia might be a cause of it. Everything here happened, or is this a story that we want it to happen?
Yeah, or what he wanted to happen.
Yeah.
It shows him like at the end, or not the very last scene, but I guess the second to last scene when, all the clowns have basically taken over Gotham, and they're all rallied around him, praising him, for starting this movement. And then next thing you know, he's in a mental hospital. That almost seemed too easy. He's orchestrated this huge thing, like without really trying to, going on in the city, but then they were somehow able to catch him and put him in the hospital. And you know what? I should have looked. I didn't even pay attention in that last scene when he was in the hospital. Was his hair green?
No.
No?
I don't believe so.
No?
I didn't think, no.
Because he had dyed his hair green for his appearance on the Murray Franklin show, which was, the day that, all that happened. So I don't know if his hair wasn't green, if they just... Several things that could have happened there. They could have just washed it out of his hair, or, enough time may have passed that his hair grew out, or... him dyeing his hair and everything that happened, or everything that we saw, I should say, never actually happened.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that gap is very, very big. So from him killing Murray on the show, there was a small gap where he was arrested. But the news basically came out and said, like, he's been arrested, he's being transported. But the gap from him standing on the police car with basically a riot going on to him being in the asylum, that gap is very, very big. It's a huge time gap right there. So we don't exactly know how long time has passed from that moment.
Yeah.
How did they catch him, or in that case? So from the first scene of him coming out from being locked up to that scene there, he may have never left. It may just been his story. Normally he comes out with his journal, but he didn't have his journal during that time. So if he had his journal, maybe we can use that as a proof, he's always been there.
When it shows him leaving the meeting with the social worker counselor there, his footprints that he's leaving behind are bloody. I'm trying to figure out, was that blood just meant as like a symbolic thing, or did he kill the counselor and then that's why it showed that worker, chasing him afterwards? Like, what my thinking is that he did kill her, and that was his actual escape. What we were seeing at the end of the movie was him...
when he was being chased?
Yeah, was him actually escaping the asylum at that time to maybe, try and go do everything that we saw happen in the movie.
What this movie did very well is keep you guessing if he actually killed somebody or didn't kill somebody. So, like, there's a scene with... He goes into his Zazie Beetz... Sophie's. Sorry, yeah, that actress. Sophie's apartment, and he leaves after finding out that this was all in his head of his time with her. He leaves, and it just cuts from him there looking at her to leaving. So it doesn't. It always gives you that impression. Did he kill her? Did he not kill her? In that case. So, and like the same thing with the end of the movie.
And once he's back to his apartment, like after leaving hers, you actually hear police sirens.
Yeah.
You actually hear police sirens in the background, making you think that they are responding to, her, someone may have found her dead. So, I mean, you never know.
So they did a very good job in regarding to that part, especially with the footprints. Is that real blood? Is that not? So, yeah. So I'd like to talk about his laugh. So in other previous movies with Batman and Joker, he's always having this maniacal laugh. So we don't know where that laugh comes from, but in this movie, they actually give you a reason why he laughs that way. It's not just because he wants to laugh that way. It actually gives you a reason, like a condition called pseudo-bulbar effect. So basically, it the person laughs or cries without their control. So it can happen in any type of scenario. So this one is basically happening when looks like when he's under a lot of stress, then that's when it occurs in this regard. So he has a card to hand out to people, passerby, so they understand, because he laughs in so many awkward moments that people start getting upset with him. Thomas Wayne punched him when he was laughing. A mom and their kid didn't know what was wrong with him, so they just told him to leave him alone. So there's just different moments that occurs. So it's just very interesting that they actually gave a certain condition to the reason why he was laughing.
So one of the relationships that he had in this movie was his relationship with his neighbor, Sophie, who he met on the elevator with her daughter. They had a little bit of small talk there on the elevator, kind of, talking about how, bad the building was. And then it shows him the next day basically following her. He follows Sophie to her daughter's school where she drops her off for school. And then he follows her downtown when she goes to a bank there. The next time we see Sophie is when she goes to his place and saying, "Hey, were you following me?" And he basically tells her, yeah. And at that point, she says, "I wish you had robbed the place." He, at that point, asks her if she wants to go to one of his comedy shows. And then when he does his stand-up comedy show later in the movie, it shows her there watching him. It shows them going around town together, having a bite to eat together. When his mom is sick in the hospital, Sophie is there with him. And then when he shows up at her apartment later in the movie and she's like, "You're in the wrong apartment. Your name's Arthur, right? You live with your mom?" At that point, we realize that, wait a minute, she doesn't know him that well. They saw each other in the elevator, but she doesn't really know who he is. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, at what point in all their time together did he start imagining it? I think we can assume that they were on the elevator together in that first scene that they shared. I think we can also assume that he followed her the next day to her daughter's school and to the bank downtown. But then after that, I think is where his imagination starts. When she came to his door that night to ask if he had been following her, I don't think that actually happened. I really don't. I think that was his imagination, because if someone's following you, you're not going to go to their door and say, "Hey, were you following me?" And then if you do that and they say yes, you're not going to be like, "Oh, okay, well, whatever." Her reaction to that was just way too calm. So I think it was at that point that his imagination started to take over as far as his relationship with Sophie goes.
So I'd like to talk about this movie's portrayal on Bruce Wayne and the Jokers and their relationship that they had. So in the movie, basically when Joker or Arthur Fleck basically finds out from his mom that Thomas Wayne could be his father, then that means that Bruce Wayne could be his brother, half brother. It makes a different type of connection. So he goes and visits them at their manor in front of the gate, and you can see that he's being genuinely kind to Bruce, and that they seem to have that. He seems to trying to have that bond with him. After finding out from Thomas Wayne that he's not his father, and he then goes, and after a movement happens and he's in the police car, you see people in a clown mask going up to Bruce Wayne, his mom, and Bruce is there, or Bruce Wayne, his mom, and his dad, Thomas Wayne. That they're there, and then that causes the famous, however you say it, scene where he shoots them, and then they both fall down and die, and then you have Bruce there basically by himself. During the same time period, that Joker basically becomes Joker. He killed Murray, and so during that time he was born in this scene. So basically the two were born at the same time, which is a very interesting thing to add to the movie, where both, like, one is basically fallen through turmoil where his parents are dead, and then you have Joker who killed somebody and he feels a lot better.
Freaking Bella. So this movie basically follows a trend that we've been seeing lately where a bad guy is the protagonist of the movie or the anti-hero. Suicide Squad, even Deadpool to an extent, could be movies like that. So the Joker has always been portrayed as a villain. He's always been the antagonist. In The Dark Knight, he was the antagonist. He's always been an antagonist to Batman or, whoever the hero was. But now, all of a sudden, he is the protagonist of this movie, and this is the character that you're actually rooting for. So it brings up the question, who is this movie's antagonist? And I think the answer to that question is actually his mother, Penny Fleck. We learned that Penny Fleck was admitted into Arkham State Hospital. Whether or not that admission should have happened is another point. But we learned that she was admitted to Arkham State Hospital and that she really didn't do a very good job of raising Arthur. What we learned from looking at her hospital records is that she had an abusive boyfriend who also beat Arthur. Said that Arthur was found tied to a radiator. When they went in, when Child Services or whoever it must have been, went in there to where they were living. So she did not treat Arthur well at all. And even as he was older, she was very demanding of him. He was basically dedicating his life to taking care of her. He was her caregiver. She didn't seem to really be wanting to encourage Arthur to have his own life. She was even, still writing to Thomas Wayne and putting these ideas into Arthur's head that Thomas Wayne was his father. Now, whether or not that's true, that's still, someone who is mentally unstable like Arthur Fleck. I don't know if that's an idea that you want to be really instilling in his head that, hey, your dad's out there. He's this rich guy. A lot of who Arthur is, or really all of who Arthur is because of Penny Fleck. And, she can be considered as sort of a hidden antagonist where she wasn't working against Arthur. She wasn't, trying to make Arthur's life miserable, but she is the reason why. And if you're going to have an antagonist in this movie or point to a specific individual as the antagonist, I think the top candidate for that is Penny Fleck.
So I also like to talk about in terms of most movies that become big movies, and this one made $1 billion for one the highest grossing rated R movie. So in this case, they're talking about sequels to the movie, a second movie, part 2. And so there's reports, Todd Phillips says no. There's others saying that they're going to. Warner Brothers basically says they have the green light to do so. I want to discuss on if we want a second movie or a sequel to this movie. And for me, I say no. I really do enjoy the movie as a whole, as its own movie itself. In terms of adding to this movie, the mysterious behind the movie is much more pleasing in this case for this specific type of movie, that I don't really want a second movie. If there was a second movie, or if Todd Phillips decided that he wants to continue in this type of genre, then we can go ahead and go with another character, another DC character, just kind of keeping that same universe. Maybe like one specifically on Lex Luthor, and we were talking about before, Lex Luthor, and kind of have it in the same design as this movie, where it's through the eyes of him. However that goes, if they make him insane or not, a businessman, just put through the eyes of him and his view on Superman. That would be a very interesting movie, and it can go dive in deeper in regarding to that type of universe. So that would be nice. Yeah.
And even a hypothetical movie about Lex Luthor, again, the style of this movie could, kind of follow this movie where Batman, the character or the idea of Batman in this movie isn't a thing yet. Bruce Wayne is still a little kid. Mm-hmm. So the Lex Luthor movie could, it could be all about Lex Luthor, not even have a mention of Superman. Maybe in the very last scene is when, Superman comes to Earth or something. But, I don't think we would even need Superman to, drive a movie about Lex Luthor. Yeah. I think that's something that we could do. In regards to sequels to this movie, I'm kind of in the same boat as you as far as not wanting one. This movie had so much ambiguity in it, which I think works for this movie. There were a lot of things like the last scene that we were talking about before, where he's in that mental hospital and we're wondering, did everything we just see happen? We were talking earlier about Sophie and like, did he kill her? Did he not kill her? Like, those are questions that, were not answered in this movie. And I think that's okay. I think that's good. I think that works for this movie. If they did a sequel to this movie, there are questions that would have to be answered at that point. If the sequel to the movie, mentions the events of this movie, like, when he shot Murray Franklin, or he killed the 3 subway guys, or, he killed his mom, then we know, okay, so yeah, everything that we saw wasn't in his head, it actually happened. And I think it'll sort of take away from the mystery of this movie. Now, one way I think a sequel could work, but they would have to be very careful how they do it, is if it's a sequel that takes place several years in the future, maybe 15 to 20 years in the future, where now Batman is a real thing, and he is going head to head with Batman now. But the reason I say that they would have to be careful how they do that is because Batman's a good guy. Ever since Batman has been around in the comics, since what is it, 60s or before that, however long the character of Batman has been around, he's always been a hero. He's always been the good guy. So if they brought Batman into a Joker movie, they would just have to be really careful to do that, because I don't think they could make the character Batman a villain, but at the same time, they couldn't turn Joker into a villain either. He would still have to be the protagonist of the movie, somehow make Batman the antagonist, or maybe a side character that, just somehow he's not portrayed as the direct villain to the Joker. I think if they could pull that off, it would be amazing, but it would be but that's like the only way I could, like, I feel like, get behind a sequel to this movie. It's something that takes place way in the future, where Bruce Wayne has grown up, become Batman, and now these two characters come together, or face off against each other.
Yeah, of course, in a society that wants to make money. So even if they do make a Joker 2, I'm going to go see it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to stop
I'm going to go see it.
It's not going to stop me from watching them, whatever sequel that they make out of it. But like you were saying, if they don't do the movie in a way that they performed with this movie, then a lot of the mystery in this movie will... it's basically forgotten, or it's like, oh, we already answered these, so we're going to continue moving on. And then from there, that's where it needs to be tread very, very carefully, in our opinion, in that case.
Yeah, because they would have to handle these characters very carefully. And I'm gonna mention another movie that a lot of people did not like, including myself, really, was Batman vs Superman. Because in that movie, Batman, even though it was Batman vs Superman, I feel like Batman was the villain. Like, of those two characters, I feel like the Batman character was the villain until, he had his moment of, realization there toward the end. That, the way Batman was portrayed in that movie is completely different than I've ever seen Batman portrayed.
There's a lot of movies that we gotta watch The Dark Knight one of these times.
Well, but even in The Dark Knight, though, like
not the Christopher Nolan, The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Returns with the animated one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It puts a different spin on it, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say, and maybe I've only seen a few of the Batman movies. I'm not familiar with the comics, but Batman has always been a very honorable character. Even in the Christopher Nolan trilogy, he didn't kill. Like, he didn't want to kill. He had a rule, like, no killing. But in Batman vs Superman, he was out to kill Superman. So, I mean, it's just, I think, just for me as a casual Batman fan, not familiar with the comics, familiar with several of the movies, though, seeing Batman portrayed that way just rubbed me the wrong way. And I think if they do something similar with the Joker here, where in this movie he's not a hero, but he's a protagonist. He's someone that you feel for. He's someone that you empathize with. If they change his character, when he does potentially come face to face with Batman. I just don't think that would go over well.
No, I understand. If they continue with the whole in Joker's point of view, it may turn that way. It may be that what Batman doing, how he's going about it, is not true to oneself. Kind of like a great moment in the Christopher Nolan's Batman series, where in A Dark Knight, where in the Joker and Batman were in that in jail, and then they were talking to each other. And so during that moment, you can see like Joker's really trying to show him his point of view, and showing him that they're no different between them two, while Batman's still trying to keep to his code and saying, no, we are very, very different. But Joker's trying to make him realize like, we really aren't. They're
Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And so that's a very good moment in the movie that I enjoyed in the Christopher Nolan series.
I'd like to rewatch those movies.
And so I think that's what, if it's done that way, then it'll be through the eyes of the Joker in that kind of fashion. So overall, what did you think about the movie?
Oh, I really like this movie. You know how you have those movies that you watch like every month? You know, just those movies that you can like quote from, start to finish. I don't think this will ever be a movie like this for me, but I really, really enjoyed this movie. This is my second time seeing it. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it like right after it was released, like digitally. It was a great movie. Of the movies we've watched so far, this is probably my favorite. It's a character that you are familiar with, a character that you kind of know about, but it puts them in a completely different light, and it works. It makes sense. Like you can, yeah, he's Arthur Fleck, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time that Joker has ever been given a real name. I don't think the name Arthur Fleck has ever been in anything before this movie. Is that right?
So with that, there's actually the Killing Joke. And the Killing Joke shows that he was a comedian, and that's where this is kind of taking away from. Okay. Not the entire thing, because they're two separate movies, of course. But there's just points in the movie where, in the Killing Joke, where he was a comedian and his stand-up wasn't very good, and he was very poor, and then it kind of led him astray, and it led him into that path. Yeah. If you guys want to, then we can go ahead and review the animated series as well. With that movie, it puts a real name to him, and he also had a real name in the Batman too, Michael Keaton.
Oh, okay.
Because he was the one that killed Michael Keaton's parents.
In that movie. Was he Arthur Fleck?
No, he was I forgot what his name was in that movie. But.
Okay. So yeah, that's why I'm glad you're here, because I am not as familiar with the movies. I haven't seen The Killing Joke actually, but yeah, I mean I really enjoyed this movie. I love the ambiguity of this movie, not knowing, and I feel like it's very difficult to get that to work in movies. Like most of the time when I leave a movie theater or finish watching a movie and there's questions like, wait a minute, what about this or what about that? Like it frustrates me. But with this one, like I'm actually having fun, like, trying to, coming up with like theory. Oh, maybe this happened. Oh, maybe this happened. And I love it. And that's, kind of going back to, what our topic before this about the sequel. That's a big part of why I feel like I wouldn't want to see a sequel. Yeah. While we may get more ambiguity stemming from that movie, it would probably do away with a lot that we got from this one. So I love that movie, and yeah, this is definitely a favorite of mine now.
No, I completely agree. That's why I like this movie so much. Yes, it is rated R, so it does have its violence. Some pretty extensive violence in a couple of points with the shooting in the train. The subway, another one when he shot Murray, and another one where he basically slammed Randall's head into the wall. So
that was gruesome.
Yeah. So there are those scenes that it shows that it's a rated R movie. So be cautious of that if that's something that you're not entirely interested in. But outside of that, the movie itself is really good. The storyline, it moves forward. There's some points where there's slow pacing, but the way they did those slow pacing, it still keeps you interested. The score is very, very good in this movie. I enjoyed the score a lot. There's different symbolism in the movie, or symbolic gestures in the movie, like the part where Arthur Fleck is walking up the stairs and he's dragging himself. It's dark, it's gloomy, and he's just there dragging himself going up the stairs. And it showed that, I think, a couple of times. And then at the end, when he when he's in that Joker persona, and he is coming down the stairs and he's ecstatic. He's happy. He's basically listening to music that is in his head, and he's basically dancing to that music. So it's basically kind of
He's found himself.
accepting his downward to darkness, basically. So there's just those moments in the movie that I really enjoyed, and that mysterious factor. Is this all real? What's not real? It's hard to portray, of course, without the director telling us what is and what's not. Just our vision of it, our point of view.
Yeah.
And that's why it's kind of hard to have I think it's kind of difficult to have a second movie. And the mysterious of it, kind of like the Christopher Nolan, is because the Joker in that movie, you don't know what's his background whatsoever. There's multiple times where he says, do you know how I got these scars? But he changes his story each time. So you don't know what he is or where he came from. So that's kind of how I see this movie in a whole.
Yeah, and another thing I want to mention too that I thought about while you were talking is, you watch like an MCU movie, and pretty much every character in those movies, even like the little just minor characters that get name dropped, you can look them up and find that they were in a comic book story from years past. Everything from those movies is pulled from the comics in some way, whereas this movie, I feel like this movie didn't rely on the comics that much. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like Murray Franklin, Penny Fleck, even Sophie, like I don't think they were comic book characters. I think they were original characters to this movie. Obviously, the Waynes are in the comics, but a lot of the other main characters that show up in this movie, I think were just for this movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like as far as comic book movies go, because when it all boils down to it, this is a comic book movie, but I think as far as comic book movies go, this movie did not rely on the comics like as a base as much as other movies have.
It kind of it's kind of strange because the way the movie is set up, because Todd Phillips is the one that directed it, and he did comedy movies. And so the person I thought that would kind of best fit in the type of movie that we just saw or that we've seen is basically Martin Scorsese. And that's how I see it. Like, it seems like he's a type of person to direct this type of movie. And so that's how I saw a lot. You have movies called a Taxi Driver, and which it pulls kind of like that dark aspect of it. And then another movie called Communion, I believe, or something like that. So those are movies I kind of pulls from. But for comic book ways, no, the only one is basically the Joker and the Wayne family. And I believe that was Alfred that he saw at the manor.
Yeah, I think he,
even though they never really name dropped him, I believe that was Alfred.
I thought he called him Alfred.
He did?
I thought I heard Bruce refer to him as Alfred. I think I could be wrong.
Then that would be Alfred. So those are the only ones that I really see. The other ones I'm not sure. We didn't have Commissioner Gordon in there at all.
Or who was Morgan Freeman's character? Mr. Fox or something?
Oh, yeah. Lucius Fox.
Lucius Fox.
Yeah. So they made it into a comic book movie, but in reality, it doesn't have to be. That's what makes it a standalone movie where you don't have to have these characters' names in it, and it will still bring an intrigue to it.
Yeah, because we didn't hear him get referred to as Joker until like the last act of the movie. Like he was Arthur Fleck. He is this character is Arthur Fleck. So I mean, I like the fact that they did not rely on the comics as much, and they just sort of took their own liberties with this character and with even the Waynes, because, and like I said, I'm not very familiar with the comics or the other Batman movies, so I'm not sure how Thomas Wayne has been portrayed in previous media, but he was portrayed as a jerk, without, I don't want to really curse, but he was portrayed as a jerk. I don't know if he was portrayed that way in previous movies or if he's always been portrayed as like this great guy, but Thomas Wayne, if you told me, and if I hadn't seen this movie and you said, oh yeah, so you've got Joker and then you've got Thomas Wayne, I'd be like, oh okay, well Thomas Wayne's a good guy, that would just be my thought.
Yeah.
But no, he wasn't. And I'm
And
okay with that.
he basically called the lower class clowns, which that's the reason why when the riots started happening, they were all in clown masks because basically that's what Thomas called them. The reason Arthur Fleck called him asked to be called a Joker in front of Murray Franklin is because Murray called him a Joker when he had him on when he showed his stand up. So he called him a Joker. So he's like, I'm going to use this against you, and that's how I got. So it wasn't like, oh, well, I'm going to be a Joker now in that case. It's more of like, this is what you deem me as. And so, you know what? Call me this way.
Yeah. Well, you've just watched our thoughts and opinions on Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of this movie, and if there was anything that we didn't bring up that you guys want to talk about. We'll have a discussion down in the comments. And, if you have any thoughts or opinions on what we did talk about, obviously let us know.
Please like, subscribe, comment. It goes a long way. I know that you hear that all the time, but it really does.
It really does, especially for someone just getting started like us.
Absolutely. So if you can do that, that'll be fantastic. So enjoy. Have a great day.
Bye.
You're about to review Joker.
Oh, dude, this is going to be epic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.